Hi, Sayantika.
Hi. How are you?
How are you doing?
I'm good.
Yeah. So, Sayantika, previously we had Minaka, and this whole conference is being like uh, live from morning 10:30, and uh, we are really excited to have you and hear your session. So, going forward, like Sayantika, can you please give a intro about yourself, what you're doing, and what your talk is going to be about?
Okay, so even I am following the session from the morning and pretty excited to
Okay.
see lots of exciting talks going on. My session is, I would say, offbeat from the tracks. I will be mostly talking about Django, which is an open source software, and then how you could use some debugging techniques and build amazing visualizations out of it. A little bit about me. I'm a backend developer by day job, and at the end of the day, I'm a community builder and also a board member at Django Software Foundation. If you have any question related to community building and technology, I might able to help you.
That's awesome. So, Sayantika, you can share your screen so that I can put it on stream.
Perfect.
Good.
So that's gonna be my screen.
Yeah. So, Sayantika, your screen is live.
Okay, perfect.
Cool.
Hello, everyone, again. So, I think it's being a very long day, and you must be very excited to dive into the extra activities that has been planned by the team. I won't take a very long time for this. It would be a 20 to 25-minute intro session to actually how you can debug Django and build insights from it. Little bit what you should be already knowing is basic architecture of Django, which I won't be covering in this session. So if you have little familiarity with the MVT architecture, that is model view template architecture, it would be very helpful and for you to follow through the session. If not, I will be keep on giving you insights as in where you can actually implement in Django, or if you have not at all used Django, that's also perfect. Going back, I hope you would able to have some insights as if how you can implement this in Django. Okay, so today's agenda is this. We'll be talking about debugging techniques. We all know there are many debugging techniques out there, and we have been using it from the entire era of software development. So I will be picking a few of them and trying to explain them and what is the modern tech that we have in order to debug. So a little bit of comparison. After that, I will be talking about few terminology, so which will be I will be frequently using in this entire session. That is logging, and then a differentiator between print versus logger. Might not sound very intriguing, but as in when we dive into it, it will be more clearer why we are emphasizing on the why not we use print nowadays and we are more into logger. And then we will be configuring it with the Django. That is, if you are aware of the architecture, then it would be going into the settings.py, the main heart and core of Django. At the end, the cool stuff will come, which is building insights. Finally, the conclusion. So let's begin. Debugging techniques. This slide actually took me quite some time to actually picturize all my bugs over here, carefully placing them so I could even uh, make this concept more useful for you. So we know that bugs are usually very small, which we say that, okay, we will fix it next time. Let's not worry about it today. Then comes a little bit bigger version of it. Then it becomes a failure. Then the entire software could actually fail. So it's very essential that we don't ignore those small little cute bugs, but fix them right in there. We know that it started with output statements. We love print. Whenever we want to see some variable which is in the runtime and want to see what it is actually having, what is the type what is the type it is carrying, whether it is int, whether it's a string, whether it's in 64, data frame, what is the type of it? So we just do a type of print type of whatever it is in Python. You might be using Java, so it would be a different output statement. So we use output statement quite often, and that's where we started actually. Now moving forward, we started using flags. It gives us a little bit more flexibility. So we use Boolean flags. Okay, this is entering here, so it would be a true flag. Then it goes to a different functional block and say, okay, this enters here, it will be false. So at the end, we say if it is false, then the test case is passed, or there is no bug involved. Else we go for comments. We tend to use a lot of comments, which is very essential, and we see how the flow is actually going. Finally, we came across debugging tools, which we will be talking about in this session. Debugging tools, how we can use it, and one of it which I will be talking about is Logger, which is a Python package which can be extended to Django for debugging it. It already exists here, there's nothing new, but how we can actually leverage the power of that package in Django is the essential part which I will be walking you through the session. At the end, it is identify, analyze, and we need to remove those bugs before it becomes something very, very big, which is difficult for us to debug, or even becomes a catastrophic failure for our software sometimes. Now we have the two terminologies which we will be frequently using, which is logger and logging. What is logging? I would just take a small example. We used to go to traveling a lot before the entire pandemic came into picture. We used to travel a lot. Someone thought that he or she will be traveling and going for a world tour. Now that person would have started from a country A and then went to a country B, C, D, and we are and in the meanwhile he or she was noting down all the countries and the places being visited. That is something which we can closely look forward to as logging. Logging basically tracks every event. Once a software runs, it is essential for debugging your software. So it tracks all your events as in when the journey continues, and you will be tracking, oh, I went for this country and this was an amazing place. I went to country B and this place was great. The food was great. And you kept noting everything in your diary. And then this also helps you to fix the crashes in terms of the logger file. If you have anything anywhere which you have a complete log file, you will say, okay, in this country, I must have missed my purse because it was a kind of very crowded country and I have very less time to actually roam across it. And I must have misplaced my wallet or my purse. So it helps you fix your crashes faster if you have a logging event taking in place. Then logger, as I mentioned, the diary is your logger. It helps you write down everything. You are the one who is holding the pen, writing all your events in the form of logging your events. And the logger is kind of uh, the diary, which is helping you to log every event. So this is kind of a small example which you can keep in mind to understand these two terminologies, which we'll be frequently using in today's session. Moving forward, print versus logger. Some people would definitely would convey to me that print is working fine for me. I'm like, perfect. It does work fine for me sometimes as well. But where it fails when there is a very large enterprise scale software that you are trying to build on. Small code snippets, a script or two print works perfectly fine, and you don't actually have to go for logger. But once your software becomes bigger and bigger, lots of modules, lots of packages, that's when you should use some higher versioning of logging techniques. Print statements, you cannot actually control the information which you actually want. You get all information from all files. You want just one file information, that one function information, and that only goes to your output stream, and you cannot store it or you cannot do any further action to it. So it's very difficult to control the log information you want to capture. with print. Also, you cannot map the severity level that involves in that particular software failure. It might be something, a small error. It might be something, a system failure. Might be you have just, your application might have crashed. How would you actually identify? There are many other ways you can identify, and logger can be one of the way where you can identify whether it's a critical failure, whether it's just an error, whether it's just information for you. And also timestamps are very essential. It help you at what time the system was down. What's the downtime of the system? This was the downtime of the system, and here are the events that happened in that particular time. Here are the set of events that happened, and this is the downtime. So maybe these 5 events, could one of them be the reason of the failure? So that's how we do the analysis part. And I hope this will help you even in your day-to-day debugging techniques. How would you do that? Get a time. This is a downtime, and here are the events that occurred in that time, and then try to see which of the event was actually responsible for the failure. Moving forward, so logger, to construct a logger, you would be you should have the knowledge of these 4 pillars. Without the knowledge of these 4 pillars, it would be kind of difficult for you to actually understand the logger dictionary object. So the first pillar is logger itself. The name logger came from the log itself. So logger is the entry point to your logging system. What is an entry point? We will be looking forward, but just remember it's an entry point. Then comes the handler. Handler is something like whether you would want the logged information to be just on your console, or you would want to be stored in some file, in a file environment, which later you can come back and see, okay, I can come back and see and check what is happening. You can have different kinds of files involved, different data, different types of files. May not be just CSV or TSV or .log files. You can have a multiple file systems. Then comes the filter. In the language of Django, how we call filter is that suppose my project is called solar system. I like space. I love talking about space and technology. My project is solar system. Inside that, I have 2 apps called planets and meteoroids. These are my 2 apps. And each app will be having certain amount of files. Say views.py, models.py, vsgi.py, and there are ample of files involved in a Django environment. And I would say that I want the log information from, say, planets app. Inside that, only views.py, and that too also from only that one method. I don't want the entire log of the entire file, entire app. That's not making sense for the developer. He or she just wants to have that one particular log information going on. So you can even narrow it down to that extent. Normally, I don't actually go deep into the filters part. I kind of do, okay, the data is coming, I'm good with it, I can understand. But if you want to have a more clearer picture, you should definitely use the filters part as well. Formatters is something very similar that you see in any log file. You have the line number, you have the file where the error or the failure occurred, and then you have the timestamp and the error message itself. So this is the entire message that you actually have. That is called a formatter. You can even say, okay, I want only the information regarding the critical failure using a file of only planets.views.py, and the information should contain the timestamp and the error message. I don't want any other data to be there. So you can have that level of flexibility with logger. You can manipulate that file, you can have build insights, which we will be seeing how the insights, how we'll be building the insights. This is the overview of what in-depth level you can play with the library and implement in your Django architecture. More about logger levels. Logger levels come under these 5 categories. Debug information used for debugging purposes, which we put. Okay, we put logger.debug, some information, and done, done, done. Info, general message. I want I want the information to be presented. I'm printing something, or I have reached end of the file, or something like that. You can definitely put it here, or you can even put the variable which you are using in your file here. You can present that here. Warnings used for minor fault occurrences. If there is any minor fault occurrences, it can be automatically triggered by the Django, or you can also trigger by yourself. If you have certain exception occurring, you can also put warnings in that. Error, major a problem occur. If there is anything major that is the major problem that is happening in around your application, that's where error occurs. We will also try to do some error, make sure we crash the system, and then an error message is generated. And at the end, information used for critical issue occurrence. Critical is only logged when there is an application level critical issue. I would say not the entire environment of your system will be taken in your picture, but only the application level critical failure would be occurring. If your database crashed, your Postgres just crashed, and or your Redis system or your MongoDB just crashed, you will be having a critical failure message that okay, something is very bad happening here, and you must just look into the critical messaging part. Example usage, this is how we will be using it. So it will be logger.debug, logger.info, logger.warning, logger.error, and logger.critical. This is the simplest how you can utilize in your methods. We will be also seeing few examples where I will be using a few of them to actually show you how we can implement these. So step by step, here at this point of the session, we understood what is logging, what is logger. We understood our examples of the world trip and how we are logging the system, and how logger can definitely help us reduce our failure rates to a large extent. And now the time comes where we actually implement all what we have learned into few slides. I will be just putting you through a few slides, but when you go back from the session, definitely give it a try, and I would be happy to see if there are any errors which I can resolve for you. So basic configurations. So everything that I'm presenting here right now will go to a settings.py file. So you have a settings.py file in your root configuration of your Django project where this dictionary object will be going here. So logger, key and value, we all know how a dictionary functions, what are the aspects. So now logging we call as a key, and there is a set of values associated with it. Version, we have to specifically give version represents the schema version, and schema, when we call in the term of Django, that's your first version of what you are building. That's your first schema version. It can be one that is by default given by Django, or you can have something of your own. You can edit that part and present something. I'm at the version 3 or I'm the version 4. You can definitely add that thing here. Disable existing loggers. Django inbuilt has something inbuilt called Django logging systems. Whenever an error occurs, the entire page goes blank and a very big error message comes down. If you don't want that to happen, you can make sure that this is turned to a false. That's the Boolean pattern that you have. Or if you would like to have the entire message come down when there is an error occur, which is not advised, yeah, you can have it true. Just for example purpose, it is true, but it's advised to have it false most of the time. Handlers, we talk about handlers that time, and if you remember, we said where actually we want our information to be going to, whether we want it to our console, whether we want it to a file. Here what I'm showing you, I want it to be just somewhere in the consoles. It's a stream handler, so it will give you a stream of output statements, output logging statements. And then comes the root. It will be in the root. And finally, the level is debug. That means all the messages that are of level debug or higher will be logged. So suppose going back to the slide, if I say I have put my level as error, so you would be getting error and critical messages. If I say I have put something called info, then you will be getting info, warning, error, critical. So that level plus higher. This is a order in which you could say you could portray the debugging mechanism. And similarly here, what we say level is debug. So debug or higher will be coming into picture. Now comes the advanced configuration. Here you will see a lot of other key and value pairs are being added. So what it is? Now here formatter, I see I have added a formatter. What it is, a standard type. Just you can name it anything that you want. I would just say it's a standard type. I want the timestamp, the level name, the name of the file, the line number, and the critical message or the error message associated with it. You can also read about how you can actually construct this. Pretty simple. There are a lot of other parameters that you can add. I just want these couple of parameters here. And then date format. This is my date format. You can skip the time if you want. You can skip the year if you want. According to you, you can actually put forth the entire formatter. That's up to you, how you would want your logger file to be. Then comes the handler. Now you can see previously we had something called stream handler. Now we have rotating file handle. Now we will see that we will be adding all this log information in a file. And I have just given giving a location, that is temp debug.log. That's my file path. I'm calling the formatter here. Finally, what I have done is that I have chosen the app level where I want only the info and higher information to be there. So here, the planets is my app name. As I mentioned, there's a solar system, which is my project, and there is planets, which is my app. Moving forward, meteoroids is another app. So I just want planets, which is my app, which I have, and I want all the log information to go to a file and of level info or higher. You can add another app here and say only critical or higher. So you can control what information would you be needing in your logging system. So that is how you can construct a advanced configuration. There are other parameters also which you can add here, this is a very good starting. This actually covers most of the requirements that you have. And moving forward, I would be giving you a small example how you can actually output the data. So here, as you can see, I have in my views.py two methods. One is just I'm outputting some HTTP response. Others, I am getting the data from my database and putting it in the form of a HTML file and rendering it. For that, I have just created my log. I just wanted to see, okay, whether I'm getting all the data from my database. This is how you can actually do it. If you have the ORM architecture, if you are familiar with the object relational mapping architecture of Django, you could actually relate to this a lot. But if not, when you get back home, you can do a small research and you can understand. But this is how I can just add one statement. And here you have to actually import the necessary imports, and then you have to call logger, which is actually creating a log. There is no restriction as in when how much you can log, what is how many logging statements can you make. There is no such restrictions in logger. You can make as many required logging informations, logging statements in your function. So here's a small example where I will show what it is actually doing. So I'm running my server here. That is my Django server. It's in a local port. That is our local port. And then I will be going ahead and showing you the settings.py file. You can see there's advanced logger information, and I have just what I have shown you in the previous slides. It's already here. And then what I'm gonna do is just print out last few 10 lines of my log file, just to make sure that we're on the same page. So you can see there are lots of debug information that are going forth. Now I will try to log some info level information that we created. Going, pasting my local path, and then I will be just hitting that endpoint. So you can see there's a endpoint that has been hit, and I will go back and see my logger. So I must able to see something called info. Oh yeah, we have something info. So planning data object 1 and 3, these are the indexes or what data I have in the database. So you can also have what is the endpoint of it and which by which port it is being called. There are ample of things that you can do. You can see there is a line number associated with it, uh, which is 17, planet, that is app name, views, that is file name, and the timestamp associated with it. Okay, now the end part, which we have arrived to the interesting part, I would say. Apart from what we have learned today, you can maximum of it you can find in most of the official documentations. It's pretty vast, which if you go through, but I would say it's very important that you know most of the basic parts so that you can build upon it. Just understand the basics, and it's very easy to then build upon. If your roots are correct, I think the tree will automatically stand tall and high. So that's all it is. So now we will be doing something interesting insights from logger file. So when we have data, when we have raw data, the first part is processing it. So I was totally blank what exactly I wanted to do with this data. Then I thought, why not give it a try to actually build some insights from it? Maybe it's already done, but I thought that it would be very insightful for anyone to just not see the entire log file, rather build some insights from it and show, okay, this can be a beautiful addition to this entire presentation. So I came up, I took the data, I stored it in a whatever file you would want to, as I mentioned. I did some pre-processing, converted it to a TSV or CSV as per your choice, and then you have to choose your data points. Which data points you actually want the X and Y to relate, or a pie chart to relate to. Finally, insightful visualizations, I was able to do it. And I think you would be even you if you try this, I think you would be even able to make a much better version what I was able to do it. So I have no doubt that you guys are super genius and you could definitely go ahead and build something amazing out of it. So here what I did, I just wrote a Python script, and I was uh, able to do the necessary pre-processing out of it. And then I created a small pie chart kind of thing. It's just with a couple of lines you can do amazing plotting and charting. So here are the labels which I could do it, and this is my output file from which I'm reading the data. Then I'm getting a count of it, how many are actually warning, info, or level type warnings. Then since it's a data frame, I have to convert the int64 to a list, because sizes takes in the form of list. Then I did a small, these all functions are kind of extra to beautify your pie chart, but you can build the entire pie chart from a data of a log file using just few lines of code. Now I'm gonna just run my script and say, okay, my pie chart should hopefully appear if there are no errors. Oh, see, now we have the pie chart up and running. So we see 16% of it is a debug, maximum of it are warnings, and around 24% is info. So we might want to cut down the amount of warnings that we have. Maybe there are no critical failures, so there is nothing called critical here, but we might want to do it like cut down the warnings, increase certain efficiency of the entire program, entire project, and move and do certain amount of other debugging, essential debugging needed. Then I also tried plotting a similar bar graph using the same data. So I could do the frequency of occurrences and the logging levels. So again, the logging level were similar. So there were two plots that I just for the testing purposes I was building on. There one was a pie chart, another was a bar graph. You can have density plots, donut plots, anything that you find interesting. Diving into the code of the bar graph that we saw, you can see with pretty just few lines of code, you could get that beautiful bar graph. And you import the libraries, you count what are the levels in that, you count the plots, and you give some labels. Obviously, a graph without the X and Y labels does not communicate well, does not communicate information well. And then just you plt.show, and this beautiful bar graph appears. Finally, that's not all I would say. There are ample of other possibilities that you can run through, that you can explore. Please do explore and don't restrict yourself with whatever there is in this session. I wish to see that some of you could come up with amazing insights and do something amazing with these packages. There are ample of possibilities and potential in the packages, and we must enforce that everything is open source. All the libraries that I use in this entire presentation are open source. Even the framework Django is open source, so there's nothing restricting you to explore that. There's nothing a subscription that you have to take or something like that. Everything is free and open source, and you can definitely explore everything. Finally, I am pretty much all the time on Twitter. So if you have any questions, you can definitely reach me out on Twitter with the same name, Sayantika Banik. I am on different other social media platforms like LinkedIn, GitHub. Sorry, GitHub is not social media. I'm sorry. So you can reach me there as well. Any questions, I would be happy to take it in person also if you're facing any issues. And pretty much that's all I have for today's session. Thank you for being such a patient audience. Thank you so much.